Okay, look, I'm gonna level with you all. I love Terry Pratchett. I really do. But I didn't read my first Discworld until I was well into college. Before him, my first love, the author who introduced me to the wonderful world of quirky comedic fantasy, was Diana Wynne Jones. I love this woman's work. Absolutely love it. The Chrestomanci series remains one of my all-time favorites, but there is another book of hers that I adore as well. A charming tale of adventure and wit, which got a wonderful screen adaptation that I still like to rewatch every now and then. No, not that one. I mean, Archer's Goon. What is Archer's Goon? Howard Sykes is a 13-year-old boy living in an unspecified English town with his father Quentin, a writer and professor, his mother Catriona, a music teacher, his sister Anthea, whom everyone calls awful, and the student Fifi, who serves as the family's au pair. It's a pretty ordinary life for Howard, until one day an enormous goon shows up at his house demanding the 2,000 words owed to someone named Archer. It turns out that 13 years ago, Quentin worked out a deal with a town official where he would write 2,000 words of nonsense in exchange for not having to pay quarterly taxes. Quentin, being a teacher, was eager to take up the offer, but now this goon says that Archer didn't get the words this time, and if he doesn't get those words soon, there will be trouble about. Of course, as Howard soon learns, there's much more to the situation than meets the eye. Who is Archer? Why does he want the 2,000 words? And what secrets lie in the infrastructure of the town? Howard had better find out fast, since this goon isn't the sort of fellow you want to mess with. How does the world of Archer's Goon work? As Christopher Bullock once said, "'Tis impossible to be sure of anything but death and taxes." Mind you, he was a pro-Hanoverian, so anything he said should be taken with a pinch of salt, but in the case of Archer's Goon, he rather struck the nail on the head. See, it turns out that the town Howard lives in is host to 7 wizard siblings, each of whom is tied to a certain aspect of the town which is taxed. The titular Archer is tied to power and electricity, the nefarious Shine is tied to crime and industry, the glamorous Dillion is tied to public services like the police and fire brigade, the elderly Hathaway is tied to road infrastructure and public records, the flamboyant Torquil is tied to popular industries like music and sports, the grouchy Erskine is tied to sewage, waterworks, and other assorted gunk, and the mysterious Venturus is tied to housing and education. Where exactly these siblings came from and how they became tied to these specific aspects is never really specified, but it's not that important for the plot proceedings. Now, why exactly the siblings are stuck in the town is revealed in the story, but that would be telling. And as for the 2,000 words and why Archer wants them, it's because Archer is convinced that those words hold the key to the siblings escaping this imprisonment, and if Archer can get free, it will allow him to take over the world.
Oh, please, Mr. Sykes, please write something for Archer. He must be just the most wonderful, the most handsome.
Boring, boring. Fifi's in love with Archer.
Oh, no, he'd never look at me.
I would.
Of course, the other siblings all have their own goals and schemes with regards to the words, and their constant attempts to sabotage or support each other kicks off the conflict of the story. What's cool about this is that after Howard's dad realizes what his words will be used for, he adamantly refuses to write anymore, hoping to spare the world from being taken over by a pack of immature magic siblings. However, when this happens, Howard and his family suddenly find the various utilities and amenities of the town turned against them. We've all probably seen a story or two where certain modern luxuries stop working for our protagonists, but instead of simply shutting down, seemingly mundane things like electricity, sewage, even roads and musical instruments become actively malevolent towards the Sykes family. Think it's bad to have your power cut off? Now imagine every electric door refusing to open for you, each musical instrument blaring in your presence, all the roads around you being dug up and repaved again and again and again, and all just to punish you. It's all absolutely terrifying, and the only thing preventing the story from becoming outright horror is that trademark Diana Wynne Jones charm. This is the thing with Jones's work. Even when facing supernatural villains who want to take over the world, the tone remains fairly light and breezy because everyone is just so gosh darn nice to one another. Even someone like Shine, who is quite literally a personification of crime, is kind enough to not just kill or torture Howard, but instead talk to him and try to convince him to give up those 2,000 words. You might think that this amiability with all the characters would make things unexciting, but Jones is just so damn good at it that the reader is, well, charmed by everyone.
I like you too. I do. You're a lovely Goon. You're the nicest Goon in all the world.
What does Archer's Goon have to say? Honestly, nothing really. It's pure entertainment, not even really qualifying as a coming-of-age story since Howard doesn't really grow or change that much over the course of the book. If anything, his arc involves Howard retaining his teenage self and identity, even as the world and his understanding of it shifts around him. Rather than growing up, Howard must make a conscious choice to stay 13 and stay as he is. Mind you, this doesn't make the story bad. I will admit I have a tendency to focus on deeper themes and meditations in the works I cover, because I dislike the popular notion of fantasy being purely mindless apolitical escapism. But that doesn't mean that I disdain popular popcorn. I just think that, like the food popcorn entertainment shouldn't be the only thing one consumes. And Archer's Goon may be popcorn, but it's of a way higher quality than your average store-bought Orville Redenbacher.
Oh, why do you always do this? I hate you! I've always hated you! What happened to my real father anyway?
He's in that poorhouse where I replaced him just like I'm going to replace you if you don't shut up and do as I say. It's my will, not yours. I've got the keys to the kingdom. Mine. I'm the god.
I hate you!
All right. Hey, cut.
I mean, no offense to Orville. Archer's Goon is really less interesting for what it has to say itself, and more for what its plot says about us. See, I mentioned back in my Hogfather video how there was this idea in the late 20th century that humanity was abandoning old superstitions and moving towards a more materialist scientific rationalism. This idea was of course nonsense, but it was pretty darn popular back then. What's funny though is that Jones seems to have been wise to the faults of this notion even when it was beginning to gain traction, as Archer's Goon is a whimsical rejection of the idea. See, there's this concept called the pathetic fallacy, which is a tendency for us humans to give human-like qualities to inanimate objects or abstract concepts. The reason we do this, well, it's mostly just that if something has the same qualities as us, it's easier for us to relate to it and to understand it. And this tendency of ours is what leads to us personifying the world around us. Whether it be the night sky, natural disasters, abstract emotions, or even death and taxes. We give these things human faces, names, characterization, and backstories. The pantheons of the world are created through the actions of the pathetic fallacy, and the reason pure rationalism will never really be the default state of humanity is because of this inherent tendency of ours. Even if there's nothing out there in this vast universe but that vanity of vanities, we as human beings, for the most part, very much want there not simply to be something, but someone out there. And part of the reason we keep telling fantastic fiction is because of that impulse to create that someone. You can see this impulse in action not simply in the sincerely held religious beliefs of millions, but even in more secular personifications, like the British monarch, sports team mascots, and even construction barriers designed like cute animals. Archer's Goon is a, for the time, modern fairy tale, not simply because it was set in the time when it was written, but because it transfers the magic of fairy tales to contemporary concerns in life. Wicked witches and evil kings may no longer be issues for most English citizens today, but the English do still have to deal with death and taxes, as do all of us. And when you think about it, how different is Archer and his goon really from a king and his dragon, which he uses to keep the peasantry in line? Christopher Bullock wrote his infamous idiom in 1716. That's several lifetimes ago, a time whose troubles and concerns seem largely alien to modern audiences. Seriously, how many of you needed to look up what a pro-Hanoverian even was? And yet, that idiom lives on, because even if none of us really care whether England is ruled by a Catholic or Protestant king, we do still care about death and taxes. And we will continue to personify these cares as violent goons who break into our kitchens and demand we do our civic duty, even if I told you already I wrote those 2,000 words! Why don't you leave me alone? Leave me alone, you vindictive Final verdict. Now, I should point out that I am not one of those fellows who believes that all taxation is theft, just Wanted to clear that right out of the way right now. However, Archer's Goon excels at taking a modern world and modern concerns and personifying them through the fantastic, for which it gets an 8 out of 10. If you haven't read any Diana Wynne Jones before, I would highly recommend this as an entry point to her work, as it's a standalone novel and was written at the height of her creative output. And even if you can't spare the time to read the book or listen to the audio by the incomparable Miriam Margolyes, the 1992 BBC miniseries is just as good and quite faithful to the source material. So, whether it's print, audio, or TV, you will be getting a wonderful experience either way. In the meantime, I'm Mark O'Keen, signing off, and I hope you liked this video. If you did, and you would like to see me make more, please leave a like or comment down below, share my video via Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or other means, and subscribe to my channel. Also, if you'd like to help this channel out, I have a Patreon, which you can contribute to via the link in the description. If you sign up, you'll get sweet bonuses like an internet hug, early access to videos, and the ability to vote in polls to help me decide which works to cover next. Also, if I manage to get to 250 subscribers by the end of this year, that is 250 YouTube subscribers, by January 1st, 2022, I will play and stream Dragon Quest V for you all. Let's do this, people. Don't make me send my goon to your houses. Thank you all, and I will see you in the next one.